God said he named the stars, and he called them out by name.
In this study, we will be looking at the book of Revelation through the eyes of the New Jerusalem temple.
And you've never heard anything like this in your life.
Chapter 20. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season. This is actually something that we are able to see within the celestial pyramid. It goes on and says, after that he must be loosed a little season. This is something that we can see within the celestial pyramid. And what happens is the position of Orion shows his rod, which is also in Hebrew called a hand, and his hand connected to the descending chamber. And if we picture this descending chamber as a chain, it goes to the nose of Cetus the sea monster, and there in the nose of Cetus the sea monster is a star that says Deneb Kados. That star is called Deneb Kados, and what it means is the chained enemy. So we can picture that Orion is the angel who came down from heaven. We're able to see his coming down from heaven in the story that is spoken of within Psalms 118, which is the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. It actually is a story of Orion on two sides of the zodiac, first in the position of the serpent holder, who is the chief, and it says the head of the chief at the pinnacle of the corner of the tower. His head is at the corner of the tower of the celestial pyramid, and it talks about that he will descend, that he is bit by the serpent, and that he descends. And then when it says it is wonderful to our eyes, the word wonderful here is the star Myra, meaning wonderful. You might see it as marvelous in your King James, but the word in Hebrew is also wonderful, and he therefore descends to the star called wonderful. And when it says to our eyes, that is the little eyes of the Pleiades, which we're supposed to see. Orion is the one who has been raised up. So he is the one who has had a key to the bottomless pit, and we're supposed to have seen him as the serpent holder, and as the serpent holder, he descended into the pit and allowed the devil, which is the dragon, the old serpent we see in the celestial heavens, that he's holding as the serpent holder, is representative of the devil and of Satan, and that he is binding him 1,000 years. We also see the term 1,000 in that where he's standing next to the ox, and that is Taurus, and the Hebrew word for ox is Aleph, which is the letter Aleph, and it also means 1,000. Also, Taurus was a symbol of the year. In the apparent travel of the sun, as the sun would die and go into the pit, it would raise up on the horns of the bull. So we're seeing 1,000 years represented here. Next it goes on and says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. The word beast here is ox, and that would be Taurus, again, that we're supposed to be seeing. Then it goes on and says, but the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, and the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. What we're supposed to see here is that the beloved city is Jerusalem. On the side of Jerusalem, you can compass about Jerusalem by being at the camp, which was originally at Gilgal, where the tabernacle was located. And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon him, and I saw the thrones, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received the mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. Then it goes on and says, verse 10, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. The lake of fire is the Dead Sea, which was once called Lake Asphalt because of the asphalt that's on the bottom of the sea, and it will be a fire and brimstone because hell is located next to it, underneath the area of Gilgal, which is at the mouth of the Dead Sea. Verse 11, and I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. So we're seeing in the celestial heavens the king Cephas, whose name is the branch, as the king who sat upon it. And we understand that there is a face in the earth, which is supposed to be the microprosopis, which is also called the image of God. Verse 12, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. We understand that the book of life can be called the Sefer Yetzirah, and that's one of the names that they would use for the Sefer Yetzirah, to see the judgment of God and those things that take place. And another message that we might see of the books being open, the celestial heavens, is also considered to be a book of life. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they actually saw that as the book of life. The Book of the Dead was actually called the Book of the Dead because it was found in tombs of the ancients in Egypt, but they believed that if they signed their name in this book of life, which was really a story of the celestial heavens, that they were going to be able to go on and live forever. And actually, this is God that signs our name in the book of life as being representative of the celestial heavens. We can see the people within the book of life represented within several constellations, one being the Argo, the ship of those who will come, and another being the essence of the glory of the heavens and those that will sing the glory of the heavens, which has to do with the constellation which is called Cygnus, which is the beautiful swan, and has a cross within it, a cross of stars. And then it says in verse 13, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. And what we understand is that the Dead Sea will have those that are underneath it, and there is where death and hell are. Death, the word death in Genesis also is darkness, and Job said that this sea that he made had a swaddling cloth of this darkness that is wrapped around it. So we understand that this is also speaking of the position of the Dead Sea. And then it says, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. So we understand that hell is located by the Dead Sea, and this has to do with the seal of El-Ol that is found by the Dead Sea, and this is part of the Zohar, speaking of this seal that is supposed to be by the Dead Sea, and this was found from satellite imaging. And also we understand that hell is supposed to be located there, and the lake itself will be on fire because we understand that it has the bitumen or asphalt underneath it, which of course will catch fire as well. Verse 15, and whosoever was not found in the book of life is cast in the lake of fire.
And as we open the book of Exodus, we're finding that Moses is building a tabernacle. Moses, who was schooled in the ways of the Egyptians, but as we understand his words, he was really schooled in the ways of Joseph. The only thing that he wanted to send on to Israel were the ideas that were hanging from the head of Joseph. And these ideas hanging from the head of Joseph had to do with the sun and the moon, and they were blessings that were going to come upon Israel. These were the blessings that were having to do with not only this story of the sun and the moon and the heavens within the heavens, which was an Egyptian concept, but also the story of the blessing of the ancient mountains, which really was the ancient mountain of Jerusalem, which was the story as well. The pyramid was supposed to have been built like unto an ancient mountain, and that ancient mountain was the place of the creation of the world. In the place of the creation of the world, the concept, the Egyptian concept of the sun, was a concept that was supposed to be seen. And that concept of the sun was seen within Heliopolis, as we're looking here. Now, within Wikipedia, we're seeing that Heliopolis was the city of the sun. It was called the Eye of the Sun, and it was on the north edge of Cairo. What's important is that this was in the province of Goshen, and this is where the Israelites lived. And this city of the sun, Heliopolis, we see within the Brooklyn Museum a picture of the concept of what the temple gateway would have looked like. And we see the expression of the dual pillars as being symbols of the cherubim. They're all dual. The bulls for each of them are dual. The lions for each of them are dual. And this all has to do with the celestial heavens and the story that's within the celestial heavens of the cherubim. They're identical twins here shown, and they're identical twins seen within the Holy of Holies as well of Israel. Actually, there was a temple within where you could see the depiction where you would not only see the twins and the pillars, but you would look inside and there was something like an ark, and there were two birds over it, and these birds were supposed to represent the cherubim. Does this mean that Judaism is a pagan religion represented by pillars? No, it means that the concepts that Egypt had were concepts of creation, and these concepts of creation Joseph had seen in a purified mode because he had been trained by his father in the Sethite religion, and he went to Heliopolis, which was the purest form of the Egyptian religion, and Joseph saw it in its purest form through the eyes of his father who had been trained. And also then Moses came to be schooled in all the ways of the Egyptians, it let us know, and in doing so it lets us know this isn't just in the ways of the thousands of gods, but in the ways of the one God religion and the creation aspects of true creation that Moses would have learned from Joseph. Proof that he learned it from Joseph, it was the one thing he wanted to send us as he closes. As Moses is closing in Deuteronomy 33, he's letting us know that there were blessings hanging from Joseph's head, and there are blessings regarding the ancient mountain, so they have to do with the creation mountain, and the pyramid was built supposedly according to the ancient mountain. It's supposed to be an envisionment of the ancient mountain, and that ancient mountain has to do, again, with the same thing that we're seeing as twin pillars, the concept of the phallic, and having to do also with twins. So what is this phallic story? According to the Egyptians, the Herodias states that the priests at Heliopolis were best informed in all the history of the Egyptians. Heliopolis flourished as a seat of learning during the Greek period. The schools of philosophy, we're reading here first from Wikipedia, and then we're going to go on to authoritative sources such as Plato and Herodias and so forth. So we're looking first just to get a general idea, and then we'll check our sources. Heliopolis flourished a seat of learning during the Greek period. The schools of philosophy and astronomy are claimed to have been frequented by the Greek philosophers, and learning going back to 308 BC. Manethan, the chief priest of Heliopolis, collected a history. Later Ptolemies probably took interest in their father Ra, and Alexander had eclipsed as learning of Heliopolis. Thus, with the withdrawal of the royal favor, Heliopolis swindled. By the 1st century, Strabo found the temples deserted. They said that there were priests still present, but by the 1st century BC, we find, though, that by the time of Jesus, the priests that were living there were instead the true priests of Israel, who had requested to adopt this area, apparently to take over the temple area that were assigned within the Bible and predicted by Isaiah. That's what Onias the high priest claimed this. You'll read about it in Josephus. We also see the concepts of Heliopolis here. It's the concepts of the sun rising over the circular mound of creation. And they're saying as the goddesses pour the primeval waters around it. So we're wanting to understand how these story of the Egyptians had to do with this creation myth, because the creation that Moses stated in Genesis was given to him by God, but he was aware of this story of the creation that was given in the Egyptian myths. And according to Maimonides, the ancients knew the truth, but they just paganized it. So in the Egyptian creation myths, there was a concept that was a lifeless sea. When the sun rose for the first time, it was called the first occasion, but it wasn't really just the sun. This concept was really the first light of God as personified like unto the sun. And we see this in the Zohar, that it's speaking of the first morning light, that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and there was darkness upon the face of the abyss, and God moved upon the face of the waters, and the face of the waters is the microprosophis, and the light of God shone upon the first occasion. It said, when God said, "And let there be light." God moved upon the face of the waters and said, "Let there be light." And in the Egyptian doctrine, this concept was called he who was Ptah, and the light that was transcendent they called the god Amun.